Adam, good morning to you.
Hey, Larry, thanks for having me back.
Thanks for taking time out of your busy day to be on with us. Boy, this progressive income tax is getting a lot of ink lately. You guys have got some great pieces up at Illinois Policy in particular. What is it going to cost your family along with a tax calculator?
That's right. So we think that residents deserve to know that this is really not just a tax on the rich, that in other states it tends to be a Trojan horse for middle-class tax hikes. And when you look at the states that J.B. Pritzker has pointed to so far for what rates could look like, it turns out that the median income family would pay more. And in fact, somebody making as little as $26,000 a year under Iowa's rates would pay more, and as little as $46,000 a year would pay more under Wisconsin's rates. And so that's not just a tax on the rich, right? This is a tax on everybody. And the reason for that's quite simple. It's because there's a lot of money in individual hands at the far end, right? The top 1%, millionaires and billionaires, but there's not a lot of them. About 0.3% of Illinoisans make over $1 million a year. And so in order to raise the billions of dollars of revenue necessary to close the structural deficit that Illinois already has, as well as finance billions of dollars of new spending that J.B. Pritzker's proposed, it's probably going to end up hitting the middle class. There's really no way to make the math work without that. And that's why we're really trying to make clear to everybody that this is not a silver bullet. Despite the political rhetoric around this, it can't do everything that's being promised simultaneously, like cut middle-income class taxes, raise more revenue, and fix the state's economy. And in fact, across nearly all of those, it will accomplish the opposite.
Yeah, and like you said, we're being told, the word panacea hasn't been used, but every synonym for it has been talked around in a circle about this fair tax. Kristen McQuarrie over at the Tribune wrote, "There's nothing fair about politicians spending recklessly for decades, failing to pay what the government owed into pension funds, raising the flat tax rate with no reform, refusing to advocate for changing the pension clause of the Illinois Constitution, and then blaming rich people for not pulling their weight."
Right, and there are other solutions. So you opened it up by talking about how the fact that there's another option, and that's one of the most frustrating things here is, in his budget address, the governor really presented sort of a false choice. He said it's either, these tax hikes I'm proposing this year, which total to about $1.1 billion. In the long run, I want to do a progressive income tax hike, which, if it's going to raise billions of dollars, is going to hit the middle class. It's going to hurt the economy. It's going to mean slower growth in jobs and wages. And in fact, when we look around the country, states with progressive income taxes grow inequality faster because of the slow growth in jobs and wages. And there really is another option. It's not either tax hikes or these slashing core services to the bone or anything like that. You can structurally reform our spending in a smart way so that the size and cost of our government is in line with what we can afford, and you can balance our budget, and we can actually get to an income tax cut. I know we've talked about that in the show before.
Sure.
But there's another piece on the website that I just want to point out to your viewers. Which is what happened in Connecticut. And we've got a new research paper out by our chief economist showing that, in Connecticut, they switched to a progressive income tax in 1996. And back then, they heard all of the same exact promises. It's really kind of spooky how similar what they're saying is. They're saying that it would have been able to decrease property taxes. They're saying that it would have been able to, fix the state's finances, invest more in core services, and decrease middle-class taxes. Well, it turns out that since they switched to the progressive income tax, first of all, their pension problem hasn't gone away, their budget problems haven't gone away. They're one of only a couple states that sort of competes with Illinois to be the worst in those categories. And middle-income class taxes, their tax burden, adjusting for inflation, is up about 13%. So middle-income taxes have gone up, and property taxes have also gone up, and poverty has actually gone up because it hurts the economy, because it decreases investment. And so, this is not a panacea, and in fact, when we look where it's been tried elsewhere, it's failed to live up to any of its promises, and in many cases achieve the opposite. So we really wish we could move the conversation away from scrapping that flat tax protection and back towards structural spending reform, which is what we really need.
We're spending some time with Adam Schuster, Director of Budget and Tax Research with Illinois Policy, IllinoisPolicy.org. Yeah, you key on that Connecticut example, and boy, there's some really frightening things in there. Cost their economy $10 billion, more than 360,000 jobs within a decade of being enacted.
That's right. And, this is not just Connecticut. I mean, Connecticut's the best example because they're the last ones to switch. And, you see this really sort of dishonest talking point on the other side of the people who are trying to push this, where they say, oh, more than 30 states already have a progressive income tax. Well, that's true, but those are the states that are growing slower. They're growing their jobs slower. People are leaving those states. The states that are doing the best are states with flat taxes, but especially states with no income tax at all. There's 9 states that have no personal income tax. Those states are seeing the fastest growth in their economies. That's people are leaving from high tax states to go to low tax states. Illinois has been losing population in particular already, and this flat tax protection is really one of the last competitive advantages that our state has. Because several states in our regional economy do have progressive income taxes, not all of them, but several of them. And so, the reason it's a protection is because it prevents politicians and lawmakers from playing groups of people against each other. They can't just hike taxes on one slice of taxpayers at a time. And if you have to hike them on everybody, well, then we're all united in our voice saying, no, how about you, get your own house in order and spend your money more wisely, and not ask to come after us. If they're able to tinker with the rates on different groups of people, then it's really easy. Maybe they say, okay, well, we're going to start with a tax on the rich, but before long, in order to get the amount of revenue they need, they're going to come after the middle class too. And it's like, there's that old story. I don't remember exactly how it goes, but it's like, they came for the blank, and then nobody said anything, and they came for them, and then eventually they came for me. And that's kind of what it's going to be like with progressive income tax, is they will eventually come for middle-class tax hikes.
Yeah, there's a great political cartoon on your site as well that says, oh, don't worry, it's only headed for the rich. They've got the progressive tax hike envisioned as a bomb heading into the middle of a crowd.
Exactly.
Oh, don't worry, it's only going to get the rich people.
They're just too big.
Yeah, and big, and like you said, they're not running a fair comparison between what other states are doing and what they've devised here.
No, and more states have gone from progressive income taxes to flat taxes than the other way around. There's states that are going the other direction, and those states are seeing that their economies are improving after they make the switch. So, we're actually not just, going from from progressive taxes to flat taxes, but every state that neighbors Illinois has cut its income taxes since the Great Recession, since the recovery started in about 2011. They've all started cutting their income taxes. We're the only ones who haven't been able to get our fiscal house in order. We're the only ones who haven't been able to bring our spending in line with what we can afford. And so we're the only ones who are talking about going in the opposite direction, and that makes us non-competitive.
And when you also have the governor coming in saying, yeah, well, we'll do all this will get us back, and now I want to spend all this money on X, Y, and Z. At least, right, as you had pointed out, the other states made moves to get the fiscal house in order before rolling this out.
And that's a great point, because this really is about raising more money, right? The governor can claim that it's about fairness. It's about changing the distribution of who pays how much in taxes. Despite the fact that the wealthy already pay a sort of disproportionate share of the total tax burden, it's not about that, right? I mean, it's about financing more money. And there's a few really scary lines in his budget address where, if you listen closely and you look at the accompanying documents, he said this is a bridge budget. And he claims that his current budget, which spends over $39 billion, is an austere budget. And he's saying these things, and he's saying that when he has a progressive income tax, that'll enable him to spend more. It'll enable him to spend as much as he truly wants to spend. And that's very scary, because that means that, he wants to raise a lot of money with this thing. It's not just about solving the problems the state already has. It's about bringing in more revenue than we ever have before. And, every dollar you take out of the economy, every dollar you take out of a taxpayer's pocket is a dollar that can't be spent in the private economy. It can't be invested. It can't be, used for your own purposes. And, that's where the depression and job growth and wage growth and GDP growth comes from. And it's why, you actually see poverty and inequality grow faster. So, I think there's some laudable goals that the governor has. He set some good goals, but the real issue is that the solutions he's suggested will achieve the opposite and really fail to do anything to improve our finances. The
only thing it seemingly will improve is our standing as far as the state with the most outbound migration.
Right, and we're already there, and we simply can't afford to do more of this. I mean, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And all we've heard so far is suggestions for more borrowing, more tax hikes, and more spending. And that's what's making Illinois an outlier, and that's what's making people leave. And the polls show it. The number one group of people leaving the state isn't retirees going to Florida for the weather. The number one group of people leaving is prime working-age adults. And when you ask them why, the number one reason they give is the tax burden in this state and the relatively lower taxes in other states. So, far from being the silver bullet, it could be the last nail in the coffin for an already struggling economy.
It's an excellent way of putting it. See, this is why we always enjoy spending some time with Adam. He's Adam Schuster, Director of Budget and Tax Research, Illinois Policy, illinoispolicy.org. Please get over to the site and have a look. You will find stuff that is so applicable to your life that will raise an eyebrow or two, maybe even your blood pressure, but you'll learn a lot from the site as well, illinoispolicy.org. Adam, thanks a lot for your time. Look forward to our next chat.
Thanks a lot.